All right, so today we are going to do a deep dive on Bill Gates.
Okay.
And I know what you're thinking. Bill Gates, Microsoft, billionaire, philanthropist, like we all kind of think we know him.
Yeah, right. Like a household name.
Exactly. But trust me, there's a lot more to this story than meets the eye.
There is. It's really fascinating, like when you dig into the sources and you find out the
Yeah.
real story.
I mean, think about it. This is a guy who went from putting a computer on every desk to like dedicating his life to fighting malaria.
Yeah.
What a story.
It's huge change.
Yeah.
It's really interesting to see kind of what led to that.
Yeah. So are you ready to go beyond the headlines and get the real story on Bill Gates?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, so let's rewind a bit. You know, you might assume that coming from a pretty affluent family, Bill Gates had like a smooth ride to success.
Right. You would think so.
Yeah.
But
But that's not really how it went down.
no,
Yeah.
not at all.
No.
In fact, his path was anything but certain.
So, I mean, the guy goes to Harvard, right? You'd think Harvard Law, that's it, he's set. Prestigious, secure. But Gates, he decides to go a different way.
Yeah, a very different way. He's clearly drawn to something much less certain, this whole world of technology.
And keep in mind, this is like the early 70s. Personal computing was barely a thing.
Right. It was like the Wild West of tech.
Exactly. So can you imagine the courage it took to walk away from Harvard, from all that pressure
Oh,
to
absolutely.
pursue something so unknown?
Yeah, that's a huge risk for anyone.
Huge. It really speaks volumes about Gates's, independent streak, his willingness to just dive into the unknown.
He definitely wasn't afraid to take risks.
So he drops out of Harvard and boom, Microsoft is born.
It's an incredible story,
It's like the ultimate tech success story.
like the textbook example.
Partnering up with IBM, creating MS-DOS and Windows. I mean, he basically built the foundation for the digital world.
Yeah, he was a major player in shaping how we use computers today.
Okay, but let's not forget that even those early wins, they weren't without their challenges, right? This was a time of fierce competition in the tech world.
Oh, absolutely. It was a battleground out there.
Apple was already making waves. IBM was this giant.
A behemoth.
Yeah. So Microsoft had to fight for every bit of market share.
They weren't just handed success.
Yeah.
They had to claw their way to the top.
And they weren't always playing nice, were they?
No, not always.
I mean, Microsoft faced some serious accusations, especially around monopolistic practices.
Yeah, those were some pretty intense times. Think about it.
Yeah.
The whole structure of the software industry was up for grabs.
Yeah.
Critics were saying that Microsoft was using Windows to control everything,
Oh, yeah.
to like stifle competition.
So it wasn't just about business tactics, right? It was.
Oh, it was way bigger than that.
Yeah.
It was about the future direction of technology.
So we're starting to see a different side of Gates here.
Definitely more than just the brilliant coder,
Right. He's savvy.
a shrewd businessman.
Maybe even a little ruthless.
Well, he was fighting to win in a very cutthroat industry.
Yeah. And it's important to understand this context, right? When we think about his later decisions,
Absolutely.
his shift in focus.
These early battles, the challenges, they shaped how he saw the world,
Yeah.
his understanding of power and influence.
Okay, so we've got Bill Gates, the tech visionary, the fierce competitor, but we can't talk about him without mentioning the rivalry Gates versus Steve Jobs.
Yes, the clash of the titans.
It's a legendary.
Two brilliant minds, but with very different visions for the future of technology.
And it's fascinating how those contrasting approaches, Jobs with this obsession with beautiful design,
That's
and
right.
Gates focused on making tech accessible for everyone.
Making it affordable.
Yeah, how those visions actually shaped the devices we use today.
It really is remarkable when you think about it,
Hold it.
how their personalities shaped an entire industry.
But it wasn't just like a competition over market share, right? Or who had like the coolest gadgets.
No, not at all. It went much deeper than that.
It felt like a real philosophical difference almost.
Yeah, you're right. It was about fundamental beliefs about
Mm.
technology and its role in society.
So like Jobs the artist, he wanted to create these seamless, beautiful user experiences, even if it meant a higher price tag.
Right, like a premium product.
And Gates the engineer was all about affordability, making tech accessible to everyone.
Compatibility was huge for him, making sure his software could run on basically anything.
And that's totally reflected in their products, right? Apple became synonymous with sleek design premium devices.
Yeah, the epitome of high-end tech.
And Microsoft just dominated the software market. I mean, Windows became the go-to operating system
For the masses.
for everyone. And looking back, it's amazing to see how both those visions actually helped make personal computers so widespread.
Totally. It's a classic example of how these different personalities, different approaches can shape a whole industry.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Right.
Okay, but here's where things take a really interesting turn. So it's the early 2000s. Microsoft's at the top of its game, right?
Riding high.
And then Gates decides to step down as CEO.
Yeah, that was a huge move.
Can you imagine? I mean, that was a clear signal that his priorities were changing.
Absolutely. He was already dabbling in philanthropy,
Yeah.
but this is a whole new level of commitment.
Yeah, it wasn't just about writing checks anymore.
No, he wanted to be hands-on. He wanted to actually tackle these global issues.
So it was about using his wealth, his influence, to make a real difference.
Not just throwing money at problems, but finding solutions.
That's where the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation comes in.
Yeah, one of the biggest private foundations in the world.
I mean, most people have heard of it,
Of course.
but I don't think they understand the scale.
It's massive.
They're pouring billions of dollars into global health poverty education.
Addressing these huge challenges that face humanity.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it. The guy who revolutionized the tech world is now dedicating his fortune to fighting, like, malaria, HIV.
Yes, remarkable shit.
But even with the best intentions, right, doing good on that scale, you're bound to attract some scrutiny.
Yeah, for sure.
The Gates Foundation has definitely faced criticism.
There have been questions about their approach.
What kind of questions?
Some people argue it's too top-down, too reliant on market-driven solutions.
So they're saying it needs to be more grassroots.
Exactly, empowering local communities to drive change.
It's interesting though, right? Even with all those resources, good intentions, it's still a debate.
There's no easy answer when it comes to tackling these complex global issues.
Nope. And then, of course, this massive event happens that really brings Gates's philanthropic work into focus, the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, that was a turning point for sure.
It really put his efforts on the world stage.
Suddenly, everyone was paying attention.
Remember those early days? The fear, the uncertainty?
Everyone was looking for answers.
And Gates was right there committing billions to vaccine development distribution.
Advocating for global cooperation.
It felt like he was everywhere,
He was definitely a vocal presence.
talking about the virus pushing for action.
And it wasn't just talk. The Gates Foundation was instrumental in getting vaccines to people.
Especially in those underserved regions.
They played a key role,
I mean, they were a major player in that whole effort.
without a doubt. They really stepped up during a global crisis.
So looking back, I think it's clear that Bill Gates is so much more than just the Windows guy.
Oh yeah, his story goes way beyond Microsoft.
He's this tech pioneer,
Yeah.
business leader, but also this philanthropist who's deeply committed to making a difference.
His story is complex, full of success, controversy, but also this constant evolution.
But one thing is for sure, he's using his wealth and influence to tackle some of the biggest challenges facing the world.
And that raises a really important question, a question we should all be asking ourselves.
Yeah, it really makes you think. How many people have that kind of power, right?
It's a select few, for sure.
The resources, the influence to actually tackle these massive problems.
To make a dent in global poverty, disease, climate change.
And how many of them are actually doing something about it?
That's the key question, isn't it?
It's pretty remarkable that Gates has chosen to dedicate himself to these causes.
It really is. He could easily just be enjoying his wealth, but he's chosen a different path.
It's like he's living out multiple lives. First the tech revolution, then this huge shift into philanthropy.
And now he's become a leading voice on climate change, clean energy, even things like sanitation.
It's an amazing evolution.
It shows that he's willing to learn to adapt, to keep pushing himself.
He's not afraid of tackling tough issues even when they're controversial.
And that's something we can all learn from.
Totally. It's about staying curious, staying engaged, and finding ways to make a difference.
No matter how big or small.
It's inspiring, honestly, to think that someone who achieved so much in one field could then completely dedicate himself to something totally different.
And be driven by this desire to make the world a better place.
It's a good reminder that we can all grow and change. We don't have to be defined by our past.
Absolutely. Gates' story is all about reinvention, right? The idea that we can constantly evolve and find new ways to contribute.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Bill Gates' life, I'm curious, what are your takeaways?
What stands out to you?
Is he a hero, a villain, or somewhere in between?
It's a complex question with no easy answers.
And how does his story make you think about your own impact on the world?
That's what we want you to think about. How do we use our own opportunities, our own resources to make a difference?
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going.
Because that's how we learn how we grow and how we create a better future.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Bill Gates. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into someone whose story goes way deeper than the headlines.
Until then, stay curious.
And keep exploring.